Alright guys, if you got a Toyota Sienna that sounds like this, then I'm hoping this will be the fix for it. I took the blower motor out of my Toyota Sienna as it's making that awful freaking chirping noise. I checked inside, make sure there's no debris, checked the cabin air filter. That's all good. As soon as you turn the blower motor off, it makes that weird chirping sound again. As soon as you turn it off, it goes away. As soon as you turn it back on, it comes back. It's very intermittent. It seems like when there's a lot of G-forces taking curves and stuff, sometimes it kicks on a little bit more than normal. Anyway, I'm going to take this apart. We're going to look at it. I think it's... these use a bronze bushing, oil light bushing style for their lubrication and bearings. So I think I'm going to try to see if we can just oil that. So what you do is there's 3 screws, bolts, whatever you want to call it, underneath the passenger side dash. If you look up underneath, you will see essentially this with a connector. Disconnect the connector, and then there's 3 mounting points which all use this type of screw here. This is a pretty, actually kind of like this because it's a it's kind of hard to see in the camera there. That's a T25 center. There's also slots, so if you strip the Torx bit out, you can use the slots. And then it's also a hex head, 8mm hex. So take all 3 of those out, this will drop out, and then you end up with this. I've already started working on this already, and pretty much got the blower cage off the main motor assembly already. And the way I did that is there's a D-shaped shaft, at least the tip of it is, and then the tip of the shaft comes out maybe 5mm outside the this edge right here, and I just simply grab it by the fan, try to grab my fingers in there as much as I can, and I just keep tapping it with the hammer, so that way there's no force really going into the motor here, that it's all force going through the shaft through the tip here. And once it gets flush, then I actually had to have my wife hold the blower motor here, and then as I held a punch and just kept smacking it. That's a tight fit. It'll eventually pop off, so make sure there's something soft underneath. So once you got that done, you have your motor assembly. So there's 4 screws on the back here that hold this plastic cover on. And you just take this plastic piece off right here. This is just a cover for the circuit board. Put that to the side, and you can put your screws in there so they don't get lost. Now what you see here, if you don't know already, this is a permanent magnet brushless DC motor, and these are actually the 3 contact points that go to the electrical field. Believe it or not, there's only 1 bolt holding this board on, and I've seen this on other ones. For some reason they just didn't use this one. I guess they don't think it's necessary, and they just did it as a cost savings. But there's only 1 bolt here, or 1 screw, sorry. And now you can pry this board up. Just be careful that it doesn't get hung up on the terminals here. And also you will see that part of the board sticks through. This is a heat sink for the I think the MOSFETs that they utilize for the brushless DC, the transistor chips. And this actually has I'm assuming a Permatex silicone seal around it, because this is for airflow to go over this and to cool the chips, and they don't want air leaking out, so it'll be a little bit of a pull to get this off. Kind of got to wiggle it a little bit. You can hear probably hear it. Alright, and so you get this, you can see that black tar goo, kind of Permatex looking stuff. Take this, we'll put this to the side, And so here's the back of the motor here, and it's bolted to the plastic assembly using these 3 screws. So I'll take these 3 screws and we'll put them to the side. I'll actually, well, don't put them there because there's a hole there. Anyway, take your screws and make sure you organize these, because I don't know if they're different or not. So, and here's your main motor assembly. Now what you do is grab this little bell. This is actually the housing that actually holds the magnets. This is actually different than most brushless DC motors you see. The windings actually are in the center, and they are actually stationary, and they actually rotate the outer ring, which is consisted of the magnets, and that ring is press fit on this shaft. So when this moves, it moves the shaft, moves the blower cage. Grab your hands firmly around this metal bell and tap, and you can see it's moving in and out, so it's getting looser. Let me get a rag here or something so if it falls down it won't damage anything. It's a pretty good amount of force. It's like I said, it's kind of a press fit. If you have any kind of style press where you can grab this lip, it'd probably be easier to press this out. But since I'm holding it in my hand, I'm not doing any kind of stress damage to it. All right. So once it gets to that D shape, it usually falls pretty easily through. And when you take this apart, your windings will probably stick in here. You really don't have to remove this, but you can see here's the windings, and here's the bell with the magnets. One thing I already did is I kind of went through here. When I was hearing that noise, I don't really see any kind of drag marks around here because there's a really tight tolerance in here. I mean, just maybe 15 thou or something in there. So anyway, we got this apart. Here's my main area I'm looking at. Is this right here, and this is the bushing bearing assembly. This piece on the back here is actually the kind of the rotary encoder for the brushless DC part, and you can see here there's 3 position pickup chips right here, and that reads where this is located at all times, and that's how it the Hall effect sensors, that's what I was thinking of, and that's how it knows its position as it's turning, so that way it knows how to pulse this motor to get it going. But anyway, we'll just tap this just to get it. It's kind of a little press fit on this little plastic washer here. We'll just tap this through, so that goes through. Now make sure when you take these out, like on the bottom here, I got a little bit of a washer here, rubber or fiber, and there's like another thin one on top of that. This is on there pretty good, so it probably won't fall out. But this side, there's the plastic, and then I have 2 shim washers underneath. You may or may not have this exact same amount of washers here, but make sure whatever you have, you don't lose. Now inside, there's a brass bushing, and there's actually 2. If you look, which you'll probably never be able to see this on camera, but if you take yours apart, you'll see there's a gap between the 2 here, because you usually don't see bushings super long. They usually put 2 smaller ones on each side, and that's perfectly fine. So what we're going to do is we're just going to essentially just lubricate this. First thing I do is if there's any kind of tar, blackness, or anything on it, or grit, grime, I try to rub that, wipe it out. So we got that clean. Anytime I'm lubricating a fan with bronze bushings, I use a zoom spout oiler. This is, I believe, like SAE 20 non-detergent oil. So what we're going to do is we're just going to squirt some of this all around the top here. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep squirting a little bit and let it like sink into the bushing. The bushing is porous, so it absorbs oil. These actually come from the factory with oil impregnated into the bushing, and it's just after so many thousand miles and constantly running in heat that the oil eventually dries up inside these bushings. That's why you see a lot of old fans. They have actually oiler ports on them, and allows you to constantly keep oil in here. But to me, it's funny that these things don't last that long, even though they went to a brushless DC that's supposed to be a longer lasting motor. You know, there's no brushes to wear out, but now we've found the other area that wears out, and that's the bushings, I believe. They just get dry. I got an old 2000 Ford Ranger that's 20 years old that has 270,000 miles on it, never had a blower issue with it making noise or even going out, and that thing has it's got brushes in it. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to lubricate this. Like I said, just keep dripping some oil in it. What we're doing is we're essentially saturating that bushing. And if you get a little bit too much on it, it's not going to hurt anything. But just let it sit there for a little bit. It'll slowly pull it in and absorb it to where it really won't drip off. But we'll move over to the back. Make sure you do this one too. And then also when you do this, you may want to squirt a little bit down in the bore. So I'm going to go ahead and go through and keep, oiling through it, and I'll come back. All right, so I'm letting that sit there for a little bit. One thing I noticed while I'm sitting here, I don't know if this camera is picking this up or not. You may, it's kind of hard to see with the shine. Let me see if I can get it closer here. See that little bit, this band right here, right where my finger is, the discoloration? That is very, very, very fine wear. Like I can feel it with my fingernail. It sits in this bearing housing about like that. So this top bearing looks like it's been starved of oil. The bottom one looks fine. I mean, this is still polished here, but this part right here is the one that's looking real bad. So I've got pretty much about as much oil as I think it'll take, or at least now for until the next 70,000 miles or whenever I have to do this again. The main reason I'm doing this is because these stupid blower motors cost about $130, I think, if you go on Amazon. If you need a blower motor, I mean, I'll put the link to the one here. This is used in 2011 to 2019 Sequoias, and I think the same time range for Sienna. Mine's a 2015. I'll look up the interchange and put that below. But it's pretty much just the Sequoias and the Siennas. So, all right, take your shaft, make sure you put it back in the right way. There's still some oil residue. Make sure you get all of that good and cleaned up as much as you can. Take your shaft, make sure your washers haven't fallen off. Put it in there. Actually, we'll just put a very light coat of oil on that shaft. And I'll actually dry one side and rub the rest. Sorry, put that in. It feels pretty good. Remember, get your, like 2 little fiber washers here and the plastic one. And we'll push this down. There we go. Now you don't want to get that so tight that this thing restricts the movement, because it can, where this is such a press fit on it, I call it press fit, it's tight fit, that if you clamp it too much, it won't work as well. So I'll just give it a slight tap to loosen it up, and so it spins pretty freely by hand. And excuse me, what we'll do now is we'll put the brush holder, I'm sorry, and the brush holder, geez, the field windings in here. If I got my terminology wrong, just let me know. There, and then when I put this on, Actually, I think when I pull this on, it's going to pull the iron core of the windings up towards it. So we'll just go ahead and do it this way, because see, it says that, see, it wants to pull it away. Make sure your terminals are lined up here through the respective holes. And you may have to wiggle a little. There you go. All right, there we go. So what we need to do is you need to hold the drum here, and then you need to hammer this piece, and make sure you don't bend over the terminals when you do it. Let's see, and then I check. Everything's good. And again, you just want a very slight amount of clearance or movement. I'm going to do like one more tap after that. All right, so I have just the slightest little bit of play right there. I mean, it's like maybe a thousandth or two. So that way it still spins freely. Oops. So it still spins freely. And I can already tell you it's spinning more freely than it was before. All right. So now let's put this back into the housing here. So we'll place that right here. Make sure your terminals go through fine. Get these kind of started. I'll go ahead and if anybody wants to know anything about this little screw gun, I absolutely love it, and too bad they stopped making them. Or they make a new version, but it doesn't have a clutch on it, and they don't have the quick collar or quick change receivers on them. All right, so we got that there. At this point, before I put the board and everything on, I want to put the blower cage on, because if I try to push this on here, what's going to end up happening is all that force is going to push on this shaft, and it's going to cause the shaft to protrude out here past where it should be. All right, so what you do is you need to put this part on a hard surface and then hammer the blower back onto the shaft. You can get it started, you can hit it, you know, regular until it gets flush, and then you may want to get a small socket to put on there so that way the shaft has a relief to go into. I'm actually going to do that off camera because I'm going to have to take this all the way down to the garage and probably put this on my vise or something out on the workbench, but I'll be right back for this. All right, so I'm going to put it on there, and you can see how far it's sticking out right there. We still have our little bit of play, so it spins freely. It was about 3 seconds worth of spinning by hand. Now we'll put the board back on. If you want to put some more sealant around here, you can. If yours develops a really high pitched like whistle from air flowing through it, you may want to go ahead and do it. I'm just going to leave it alone and put it on there as is. The only thing you need to be careful of is all these terminals. Make sure that they go, or these three terminals go inside their cavities and they're not outside, so you make good contact. So you need to visually line those up before you push everything down, and then you can kind of work all three of these down. So that's seated. These need to be pushed down a little bit, and we'll put this one screw in, and we'll take these four, and we'll put this back on. And that about wraps it up. Like I said, this thing's 120 bucks, and so if I feel like I can do it here at the house without having to order something, then you know, let's go ahead and do that. This may not actually fix my issue. I don't see where it's rubbing or hitting anything. So I'm wondering, the only reason I think this may work is because of that wear I saw on that shaft. Yours may just be making a sound, you know, similar to mine, and it just needs oil. But I'm hoping this is what this is. I mean, it's worth a shot. You know, it takes. I mean, if you're going to pull it out anyway, I mean, it's so quick to pull this piece out that you can quickly take it out, do this, put it back in, probably less than an hour. And if you know what you're doing, you can probably do it in less than 30 minutes. So I hope this works. When I post this video, I probably won't know yet if it has worked. Like I said, it's intermittent, but I'll give an update below in either the description or a high-level comment below. All right, so I'm going to have to come back and edit this video. I've actually, this portion of this video right now is actually taken about 3 days after the initial working at my workbench video. Put it in the vehicle and everything was going fine. It definitely took away the noise. I took it for an hour drive. Everything was good. And then lately I started hearing this almost like an electromagnetic hum that started resonating. And then what I also found out is sometimes it would start up. You could hear the blower fan kick on. And then all of a sudden it would cut out after like 2 seconds of trying to start up, like whoop. And then you'd have to turn the blower off and turn it back on, and it would just keep doing that. So I decided to take it back apart, and one thing I noticed here is, I don't know if you can see this on camera or not, and we'll try to, the male terminals here are outside the female terminals. And I was looking at like, how the heck that happened? I know, I even looked back at the video, I put these on top correctly. So what's going on is the stator windings are actually floating on the bushing assembly. When the motor's getting turned on, it would pull the stator windings up towards, I guess, magnetic center and pull these terminals away, and then after it turns off, it'd pull it back down, and somehow those terminals got stuck here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here, remember I was showing the stator, and it kind of just slid right on top of this. Well, what happened is when I was hitting it with the hammer and impacting it, the stator broke free and allowed this to slide on the bushing assembly. And I'm gonna try to take some pictures. I've already staked this back, but the top laminations of the stator core, you kind of see there, and yeah, right there. See that little, right there at the edge of my fingernail? Those little fingers, or the edges of the stator, the laminations, are actually staked into the plastic to keep this from moving. What was going on is, as soon as this gets energized, it wants to pull towards the magnet. So this piece right here would try to pull up, and then it pulls these terminals away and causing disconnect. So I'm actually re-uploading this video and re-editing it to add to this, because I thought I was done, but I'm evidently not. So if you do end up hitting it with the hammer to get this thing apart, you need to make sure that this stays on there real nice and solid. So probably a better way of doing this is, instead of smacking it on there, because after this is done, I don't want to smack this with a hammer to get this piece on anymore, because that vibration will break this free. Another way, I guess, is you can always take some like Gorilla Glue, super glue, and glue this thing on there, because you really don't need to remove this. It just ended up breaking free. I'll show you how I do it on a arbor press, putting this piece back on, because after you put this on and stake it, you just want to avoid all vibrations altogether. So I'll show you how I do it on a press. So here it is here on the 1940s Atlas mandrel press. It's an arbor press, but just line up the the ram right there on it, and then just push it in. And then fill it. I see you can always overdo it here, so I'm going to. All right, so I overdid it a little bit and it's too tight. So what I did is I took a drill press vise here and I got the bell end of the magnet holder right here, and I got the lip of it on the jaws. And so what I'm going to do is just ever so slightly push that back through to give it a little bit more slack. Right there, I think that should work. To where, you know, it's nice and free again below. If you like this type of video, I do a few other videos about fixes, some cars, some random stuff at the house, do some mini bike stuff. If you like that kind of stuff, you can click subscribe. And if this video helped you out in any way, give me a like button, or click the like button. Thanks guys, and keep on watching.